Hey, what is going on, everybody? Mark here. I'm joined today with John, the other co-owner here at Silversound Guitar, and we wanted to talk a little bit about what today, John?
Today, I think we just wanted to have a little conversation about little things about guitar, not necessarily about playing, that you wish you knew before you started playing.
And it's funny because you never know this kind of stuff until after you've been playing for a long time and you see these things from other people who are starting the instrument, right? So, yeah, John, why don't you take it away first? Let's do this. What are two things that you wish somebody had actually talked about? Now, we both know, like, we've watched a lot of YouTube videos, we've watched a lot of tutorials, we've learned from quite a few people, right? What are two things that you really wish someone had spent some time talking about?
I would say first, the biggest thing was if someone had sat me down and just talked about, like, the body of the guitar, the neck, the shape, how it feels. Because the thing is I think I was really obsessed with, like, the aesthetic, which is cool, you know? Like, I don't know what kind of guitar I want, but I want a red one, and it's got to be a Fender. Like, so instead of that concept, just, like, how does it feel? How does the neck feel in your hand? How does the body, does it have that little, like, curve? Do I like that curve? Do I not like that curve? What do I want to be able to do with it?
Well, and that's a question for you, too. I would say, is going off of aesthetics for that bad?
Not necessarily, I don't think. But again, just because it looks cool, you may not like the way it fits with your body or how the neck feels in your hand. So at that point, you kind of got to rethink a little bit and just go, okay, well, what else looks cool but feels great? You're going to be sitting here like this with the guitar. If it feels weird in your hand, like, why are you playing it, you know? So that would be the first one, because honestly, I bought several guitars that I thought looked cool, but I just didn't end up liking it for one reason or another, and I think ultimately it just came down to how it fit with my body.
Question for you, too, because obviously it sounds like this might be the case.
Yeah.
Did you buy a few guitars before you found one you liked?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How many did you go through?
At least two, but then there were other guitars I bought along the way that I was like, I don't like this guitar. I thought I did, and now I don't. So, a lot of that just came down to, like, how it played for me and how I wanted a guitar to play. So,
and I got another one to branch off of that for our listeners, right? It's like, hey, do you have to, like, what happens if you get a guitar that's not super expensive? What does that do? Does that change the way that it feels, or is that really irrelevant?
I mean, it can, right? So it can depend on, like, the construction and the wood, and, you know, think about the frets. All those sorts of things go into it. But that doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. I think there are a ton of guitars, you know, even at that, like, $250 range, that will get you going. And if you're willing to spend $500, which might seem like a lot if you're just getting started, but like, $500 will get you in the door with a really nice guitar and plenty of options, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And sorry for asking so many pieces of that. I feel like that's such like a multifaceted question, though, because it's like, well, the body of the guitar, and it's like, well, when you're starting guitar, you don't realize that the neck could be like 800 different shapes.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like, the different
I had no idea. I just played. Like, I was never into studying the guitar about like, ooh, how's the neck feel? I just grabbed something that felt good.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn about that until we were in college.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I didn't understand that there's different, like, shapes that could be.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
Okay. Well, but you seem to have, like, settled on this Strat style body. I mean, when I say Strat style, I mean Stratocaster specifically.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I love the way that mine is shaped. It's very, I don't know. I think it's a modern C.
I don't know, to be honest, that particular one. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of your standard American Strat.
Yeah.
You know,
small enough to where I get excited about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, but I mean, you yourself, like, you've gone through Les Paul style guitars and Ibanez and these sorts of things, but this is kind of where you've landed.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it just felt good.
Yeah. But see, that's it.
Yeah.
It should be about how it feels in your hand. And I think instead of just going off the looks or because this is what this guitar player plays, like that's what he plays because that's what he or that's what they prefer.
Yeah.
And you really have to think about, okay, what do I want my guitar to do? So
yeah.
But and I think that you asked for two things. That brings me to my second thing is honestly pickups. So
I hate that you said that because I had a student recently that was talking about pickups.
Okay.
And it dawned on me that I had changed my pickups so many times to play with sound.
Yeah.
And I never even thought about it.
Oh no, that's crazy. Really?
Yeah. Like I was like, oh, I guess, yeah. Like I don't even play with standard American Strat pickups.
Okay, well what do you use?
So these are all custom shop. So I've got an SSL 5, a 7, and a Pearly Gates.
Oh. That's ballsy there in the bridge.
But it's supposed to mimic the Les Paul.
Right.
Which is hilarious, right?
Yeah.
But I think for rock, it sounds really cool.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
got like a really distinct tone.
So, but that's kind of an interesting thing, right?
Right.
And that's what I'm getting at is like that particular pickup configuration versus like a Les Paul configuration, plus the neck, the scale length, all of these things that go into just how the guitar feels and then the pickups, how it sounds. Like what's the difference between a single coil versus a humbucker versus a different set of single coils, or like on mine, I've got a coil splitter.
Dude, that's crazy. Because you're right. I don't think anybody just genuinely asks those questions until you're looking at something, right?
Right. So with my students, and when they're ready to buy a new guitar, I ask them these questions. Yeah. What are the sounds you're looking for? And to get that, what does that mean? I have them try all the different guitars in the studio. Mm-hmm. Just like, here, take the Les Paul off the wall. Here's, a modified Ibanez. Go ahead and play my guitar here, which, I've got a hot pickup in the bridge, but it's not like a super screaming hot pickup. Yeah. So those sorts of things and understanding that there can be a massive difference, even in your humbuckers, just because it's a humbucker doesn't mean it's going to be a particular sound. So just having that awareness. And I went through so many guitars because I thought it was the guitar, not realizing like it's the pickup or the pickup configuration or those sorts of things. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So those for me were two huge things that really made the difference once I started understanding that and really shopping around for guitars. But what about you? Could you name two things that you think would be huge for understanding before you start
playing? Yeah. Absolutely. I think talking about the picks that you're interested in.
You mean actually just the pick? Not the technique, not anything else.
Nothing that goes along with this. Because I found that over time for me, I used to just play whatever I could find, right?
Right.
I would even cut up like old stuff and just like I didn't even care.
Oh, like the little credit card thing?
Like I just do whatever, right?
I mean, it looks cool, but I hate the way it sounds.
I just didn't know. I didn't know that there was texture differences, and that each one would hit and obviously, like, the more that you play, it makes sense, right? We're talking about going back to, like, you even understanding how to hold a guitar, right?
Sure.
I didn't understand that this would, at that point in time, change the sound that much.
Right.
And so...
That's huge.
And so, think about the different things as well. Like, I started off playing acoustic, right? That was, like, the bigger thing that I did when I started playing with a pick.
Right.
I was doing an acoustic, and I would play with the lightest gauge picks I could find.
Which makes sense if you're doing a lot of strumming, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and it felt really, really good and natural and airy, and I got like a really cool sound, but I would notice that, because nobody talked about it, they were just like, do you got a pick? Like when I took guitar lessons, it was like, oh, do you got a pick? Mm-hmm. Great, let's just jump in. And no one spent the time to do that. And so what I realized is that obviously the thicker, like for me, I play a lot of faster. I play faster now.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
Sure.
But I noticed that I ended up gravitating towards a super thick pick because it just stays stationary and it's more controllable for the sound. And I've noticed that now I can choose to do, with my dynamics a little bit more aggressively. Right. Whereas I feel like when I first started, I had to play with a lighter pick to get some of those dynamics.
Yeah, like that's kind of an interesting thing because obviously with a heavier pick, you can have a lot more control.
Yeah.
But I think you have to learn that control. So that's kind of for me, that was sort of the dichotomy. Is like,
Yeah.
as I got to be a better player, that right hand control and being able to get the dynamics out of my right hand was a big leap for me forward.
Yeah.
But I guess with that in mind, like, how do you start your students out with a pick? Like,
So we start by trying different gauges
okay,
and different size picks, because the ones I used to play before these ones that you got, which ones are these, by the way?
these are the 2 millimeter Dunlop flow picks as I throw mine on the ground, specifically the John Petrucci ones.
The
So,
Petrucci, yeah.
yeah,
So
complete shill for Dunlop here. Go ahead and send us some picks, guys.
I loved the way that these felt, and prior to this, I was stuck playing Jazz 3s.
Yeah.
But I really liked the Eric Johnson ones.
Right, which are a little bit bigger,
Which
I think,
are
than the standard
I think
Jazz
that they
3s.
have a different point.
Yeah.
I think it's what it is. I think they have a
Okay.
different point. So I just liked, and they were a little, like, they had the grippy stuff on it, and for whatever reason, I was like, yeah, cool, I won't drop it. And like, it's very rare that I drop a pick. You know what I mean? Like,
I wish I could say
when you're
the
just
same,
throwing
just
it, when you're
like,
just
come
throwing
on.
it around. But when you're playing, it makes sense because your body really adapts to having that once you've been playing it a little bit. You know, so for me, I don't know. I feel like we end up doing the trial and error, because I noticed that when you first start, the bigger picks make more sense because it's a little more awkward to hold. You know, your hand. It's a little. You're just kind of like, I'm not sure, and so it makes more sense. You know, and you can try the smaller ones, but you just don't know what to do yet. And that's kind of one of those things where it's. I think when you are you know, when you get to see and try a few of those different things, you get to feel kind of what's going to work with your hand, because something to think about too is everybody's hand is different.
Yeah.
The shape of everything is so different that those small details can make a big difference on why somebody likes something. And so I think it's important to know that there's other choices out there than just the standard, hey, look, this is just a pick. Here you go and try it. And I think that's something that, you know, I think about this as we're doing lessons, and I go, man, I really wish somebody would have taken the time to, like, just, even if it was for 5 seconds, tell me that there were different choices and that they mattered.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, for me, it was instead of somebody having a teacher to take the time, it was I either played what they played, or I would look and see what some of my friends were playing or my favorite artists were playing, and that sort of thing. And just kind of go that way, and ended up eventually same thing. Ended up with Jazz 3 picks for that same reason.
Right.
But and then went through a period just recently where I was like, I'm gonna try some different things, and I've landed on the same picks. Like I really enjoy them. So okay, so what else?
I'm torn. Okay, I'm torn between my second one. John's put me on the spot here, guys. So
that's the plan.
Is it for every student, regardless of guitar style, or would it be for like electric guitar students? Because I feel like there's something different that I would do if you were an electric guitar student versus coming in with an acoustic guitar or a classical.
Yeah, totally. I would say go ahead and pick whichever, man. I mean, I picked 2 things that were basically electric. I mean, they didn't have to be, right?
I know, but
pickups are definitely an electric guitar thing.
I'll tell you what I was gonna do. But I think that this is more important. I feel I was going to talk about string gauge size. And I was going to talk about how understanding, like, different, you know, like what your body does from an acidity standpoint on the strings actually changes how fast you're going to be melting through some of these if you're practicing a lot. But I realize as somebody who's starting guitar, you should buy a ton of strings anyways and get good at changing them because you're going to break them. And so... I'm gonna scrap that idea, and I'm gonna say I think that you should invest in an amp that has sounds that you like. And I'm talking like I know seasoned vets on the guitar are gonna be like, well, tube amp, and I'm gonna say no. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think you should start with a solid state amp, and I think it should have a varying array of sounds that you can play with and understand and physically change the knobs, and so you can see and hear as you're messing with these sounds what it does to your guitar. Because I've had so many students that have played and they're like, well, I like distortion, but they don't understand what distortion does to the tone. They don't understand how delay affects so many different things. And so I feel like being able to play with the sound, treating it like you're just experimenting with that box of crayons, and you're going, wow, I didn't realize that Crayola makes this many colors, like, and being able to just dig into it. And the reason I say go with a solid state starter amp like that is because I don't think any new student should be spending hundreds. I mean, like, unless you're just loaded for some strange reason and you feel like the need to just throw money away, I don't think buying pedals that you are not sure that you're gonna like is a good investment. I mean, don't get me wrong. If like a new student came in and they had like every Earthquaker pedal, I'd be like, that's rad. I'd be like, we're gonna have so much fun. But I just don't think that you have like a concept for what these things do yet. Yeah. And so I think being able to introduce yourself to something that does that, or even getting like a really crappy amp, and even if you were rocking if you had a tube amp that was like a hand-me-down, right? Getting something like the HX Stomp or like one of the old school pods, you know what I mean? Or like just something that has
sort
a
of
lot of
multi-effects
sounds.
processor.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're super big on computer stuff, I would say avoid the amp then and get like bias or get, like I have the Helix Native, right? Because I use a Helix. So it's like I would just say something like that gives you some tones that you can experiment with and just start immersing yourself in what guitar sounds are. Because I feel like that is going to help you understand what colors you like more as you start to develop your skills.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Because nobody talked to me about that. So I ended up having, do you remember those I ended up getting one of those like really tiny like Ibanez. They were like, it was like a 4-inch speaker or something.
Oh my
it was
God.
just like, it was, and it had distortion, and it had the gnarliest distortion I've ever heard in my entire life. Like to this day, it was like, you would turn it on, and it was like, it sounded like a Boss DS1.
Nice.
It was just like, wah! And it was just like gnarly. And I loved that.
Yeah.
Because of course, I was wanting to play like all of, like for me, it was playing all of Metallica.
Sure.
I'm just going to be real.
Yeah.
All my friends were like, you can't play Master of Puppets. I was like, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was trying to learn the solo, and I needed distortion. And so I ended up going to get an amp. And of course, like, they didn't have as good a technology as they have now. And so that's kind of my advice is I feel like as somebody that's grown up through seeing a lot of this stuff change, I don't think that you shouldn't experiment with a tube amp. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that as a starting guitar player who's never played guitar, I think it would be a wise investment for you to get something that has a lot of these sounds, so you can check that out before you get better at guitar.
Yeah, there's loads of options out there too. That's I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, if I were starting out, that would be huge. I would try to find something that does all of those things instead of, I mean, I did buy a multi-FX processor. I hadn't it took hours of trying to figure out how to play this thing, how to use it, and like turning knobs that seem completely unrelated to whatever they're connected to.
Dude, trust me?
Yeah.
When I switched away from all of my gear to a Helix, it was baffling. I spent hundreds of hours.
Oh, I believe
and then when
it.
you factor in IRs on top of that, I was like, oh.
Whew.
And it was like and it was like, again, that's like playing with some of those colors you just don't know. Yeah. And I think when you first start, you're training your ear, right? And so saying, well, let's get some impulse responses. It's like, well, you might not know that like this one sounds this little bit different than this one yet.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really good point.
And so just getting whatever you can and something that has a bunch of sounds. Because I like the one thing I hate is like I've seen so many people grab pedals, myself included when I was younger, and like you play with it for like a week and you're like, and you take it back and it's or you trade it in for something else and you're losing money on it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Wow, that's really great. I think that's huge advice, man. Huge advice.
So yeah, I guess that concludes the pre-guitar guitar player advice handbook.
Yeah, just a few quick things, to think about. I mean, if you're starting out or if you're helping somebody start out, like these are key things that really make a difference, I think, in just wanting to play the guitar.
Yeah. Because
if you've got, like I was saying, a guitar that you just don't feel like fits you well and isn't responsive, like you don't have a connection with it, then what are you doing? And if you've got an amp that just sounds like garbage and you can't tweak it at all,
you're not going to want to play it.
Exactly. So, there is a little bit that goes into this. There's some truth into like finding gear that works for you, So there you go.
There you go.
Find gear that works for you.
Find gear that works for you. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful in any way, shape, or form. If you do, stay tuned for more tutorial videos, more gear talk, more guidance. Hit that like. Appreciate it so much, guys.